before we get into all things data, which I'm super excited to talk about, I would love for those who do not know you yet, can you share a little bit about your journey from Marine Corps veteran to pet business owner and also now, incorporating pet business data strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Corinne Moore. I own a dog walking and cat sitting company in Madison, Wisconsin. And I actually started out working for my company under my big sister being the boss. It was a fun experience. Actually, she was a really good boss. Then I went off, did my own thing, went to the military, went to college, and when my sister said that she was selling, I jumped at the opportunity. So that's kind of where I got my company from. It was a family company, and I took over in 2019. So I went through the really, really turbulent year of 2020 as a small business owner, and I was not prepared, as was nobody. So that kind of made me want to fine tune my company. And then at the tail end of 2023, when I started hearing about people niching down, people kind of like figuring out what they wanted from their company, I got motivated and I really dug into my numbers then, especially thanks to Michelle Klein. And that's kind of where my love began.
It's funny how times like COVID or the pandemic, obviously we still wish that maybe that didn't happen, but how it kind of forced us to pivot and become like better business owners. And maybe you wouldn't have gotten into all this data stuff if it weren't for this turbulent time of the pandemic.
Right, absolutely. That was, it made us all realize how resilient we are. I think entrepreneurs in general are resilient, just resilient folks in general, but going through that experience definitely changed us.
Yeah, for sure. So would you say that going through the pandemic and everything was what sparked your interest in tracking data, or how did you get into even looking at data? Because I'd say that majority of pet business owners are not like, okay, I'm gonna start a business and I want to track my data because I'm like super into data. Like, how did you really get into that?
Well, when I went to school originally, I was going for accounting and I got, I loved Excel. I loved Excel. I still do. And I've always been like a numbers person. But admittedly, during the pandemic, I kind of closed my eyes and I was like, I don't know what's going on. It's fine. Everything's fine. Just because I just couldn't handle it. I had a baby at the time. I was just trying to keep us afloat. So, but in 2023, I actually ended up in the ER for stress and anxiety. And that was when I realized something in my business needs to change. And I'm not going to feel good about changing my business until I know where we stand. And so that's when I really dug in and decided to really track everything.
That's so cool. I feel like you just gave me the chills. I'm like, I love when there's like these, like, not that I hope for anybody to end up in the ER, but like the wake up calls sometimes are so like they can change everything. And the ability to look at it and be like, okay, something needs to change. I need to look at the data and to, inform these decisions, which is so smart because a lot of times you can just like, I need to just quit or I need to, just, I don't know. I love that you really looked at what is the smart decision here moving forward.
Yeah, and it's hard because I feel like a lot of us, we're so tied to our businesses as like part of our identities. So when that is kind of crumbling, we're like, I don't know where to go from here. So I think
Mhm.
looking at your numbers, looking at your data and your metrics can really help you figure out, okay, where do I go from here?
Yeah, no, that's really smart. And it's something that too, when I interview people in podcasts, there's always ways to like lean it into so many different situations. So like for me, for example, as a mom, it's like looking at like how can you simplify your business and how can like different ways you need to pivot as like just life, right? Whether you're having a baby or like you're going through a change or you want to do something different instead of just being like, well, I need to like pare down the business and now like shrink it. No, actually, let's look at data. Let's see what we can do from data to actually change things there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why do you think so many pet business owners avoid their numbers or feel intimidated by them?
So I think that a lot of us in this industry maybe got into this industry not intending to be a business owner from the start. I think we kind of, a lot of us at least, I'm not trying to generalize, but a lot of us kind of find ourselves in this position where we become one because we, are doing well, doing pet sitting by ourselves or solo or what have you. I know I'm a different case because I actually like purchased my company, but I think that, the love and the passion that we have for pets like leads us to become business owners without necessarily knowing what it takes to be a successful business owner. So a lot of us just learn on the job. We go in just not knowing. Whereas if you've gone into, get an MBA or what have you, you might have more experience with the business side of things first. So I think that folks just don't know where to start. It's overwhelming. You're trying to learn so much stuff on the job when it comes to contracts and employees and everything that you would not think about when you're solo necessarily or when you're smaller. And then you realize that, oh, I need to like figure out some of the business side more. So it's just, I think people just aren't experienced in it, maybe.
And I feel like it almost sometimes feels as a supplementary thing. Like it's almost like a bonus. Like, okay, you have a business. Obviously, you have to have a contract in place and you have to have, clients and you have to be able to somewhat market your business. But like data, it's like, oh, well, do I have to do that? And how much could like your business change? I feel like sometimes there's not that like people don't realize the transformation that can come from understanding your business truly through that lens of numbers and data.
Right, exactly. And like you said earlier, it really can inform decisions. I think it's great to track data and metrics, obviously, but I've had a lot of people that have approached me and been like, I had no idea to even think of tracking this because they're doing well on their own, but it's like you could, elevate your company or make it work more for you if you know your numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something too, despite being a designer and a creative, I'm actually very like type A. Like I love data. And so when I learned about like Michelle, and then I actually joined that webinar you did with her way back, I don't know, a few months ago or something like that, where you guys talked about data. And I'm like, oh my gosh, people are talking about data. Like, you don't see that. You don't see that very often, specifically in the pet industry. So that's why I'm so excited to talk with you about all of this. But I'd love to learn a little bit more about how, you said everything with like in terms of your timeline, you got the business in 2019, you had to go through the pandemic. Something had to change for you. Can you share a little bit more about what that looked like? How did you start looking at the numbers? How did that help your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I ended up joining Michelle Klein's mastermind just because I saw her Facebook posts around the time when I was like in the ER. I was extremely stressed. I was not having a good time personally. Um, and she really inspired me. And I was thinking to myself, man, she niched down to just dog walking and was more successful. And that seemed backwards in my mind because I had always been like, oh, I have to work 24/7 to earn money. I can't earn money if I'm not working. If I'm not working, this hour's wasted. That was my mindset. But seeing her success and then seeing other people's success taking her mastermind, I was inspired and joined on for that next January. And that's when I started really, really diving in because I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this 100%. And I'm going to figure out if this is possible for me to do. So I ended up niching down a bit, not to just dog walking, but we were a full service all the time company. And then we niched down to dog walking and cat sitting for 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
That's awesome. I love that too because and we'll talk about this a little bit later that you're actually one of our brand and website design clients. So you were actually one of our first clients that were very specific and like, this is my offering. And it, even from the user perspective of like, I come across your website, you have two branches of service. It's like simplifies it so much. And like, it's just like we have the dog walking side, there's a page for it specifically for searches. And then same thing with the cat sitting. It's very clear when you niche down rather than being like full pet care. It's like, well, what does that mean? And what do I need? And what are all these different visits and what is this, it's so it can be
Yes.
kind of confusing.
Yep. It could be
Yeah.
confusing for people like, is this boarding? Is this dog walking? Is this dog sitting? Yeah.
Mhm.
For the
Yeah.
clients. So
Yeah. There's so much beauty in niching down. And is that something that too, like when you went through the mastermind, is that something that you guys I mean, I know that, she's a big believer in niching down and specialization and stuff like that and scaling, what's working. Is that something
Yeah.
that you looked at? Like, okay, I should look at what service is bringing in the most revenue. What data did you look at?
Yeah, so I definitely looked at the different revenue from different services. And to my surprise, I found out that my dog sitting was actually the least valuable, but brought me the most stress. So that was when I decided to cut that service. And I won't say that transition was super easy because, you've been serving these clients for years and years with a certain service. But I found that with that brought new clients that were more my ideal for what I wanted our company to be. And yeah, I dove into a lot of different metrics. I looked at zip codes of where services were, so I could target those neighborhoods with marketing and advertising. I looked at what was the typical client that I had, and I found out it was like a younger pet parent that was a young professional. So I started really targeting, tech companies in our area, healthcare companies in our area with marketing and advertising. So Michelle talks a lot about that in her mastermind, like finding our ideal client. And I think that using my data that I had, I was able to find out what that was.
Yeah, that's so smart because I feel like a lot of times when you hear professionals talk about finding your ideal client, a lot of it is very like, which obviously you want to work with people that you want to work with, right? Like you sit down
Yeah.
and you're like, well, this is like the person I want to work with. And you list out like an ideal scenario, but you also really have to look at the data, who's in your area, like who is
Yes.
looking for your services and how can you appeal to those people? Like the data is like, there's an overlap of like, what do you want, but also like what's in your area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found out that a lot of our cat clients that use us are retirees. So my dog walking clients tend to be the young professionals. My cat sitting clients tend to be retirees that are traveling a lot more. So it's just interesting the different
Yeah.
things you can find out when you dive in.
And like how that can impact your marketing and your language and what you use, like what
Absolutely.
it's the avenues and all of that. It's so fascinating. Okay, so if somebody is listening to this and you're like, okay, she's tracking a lot of information, I don't even know where to start. So if somebody's never looked at their numbers, where should they start?
Yeah, I would definitely look at the percentages of your revenue that is each service. How much of your revenue comes from cat sitting? How much of your revenue comes from overnights? How much comes from, daily dog walks? Because I think that that was the most eye opening for me. I had no idea that our pet sitting or that our dog sitting was so low. And that was what kept me out, doing bedtime visits or staffing bedtime visits. So that was just really relieving, actually, for me personally, because I knew I didn't want to go in that direction. And that just like solidified my decision. Other than that, I would really recommend looking at your client retention because you can actually break it down. I know in Time to Pet, and I'm unsure about other software, but I know in Time to Pet you can break it down so you can see how long these clients stay with you in each zip code and by each type of client. So I really recommend looking into that to see, okay, maybe my cat sitting clients that are in this certain zip code like stay with us for like 4 or 5 years and they're really, really great clients. So maybe I'll, direct my ads towards this zip code.
Yeah, that's really smart. And is the revenue by service also something that you track in Time to Pet?
Yes, yep, there's a
Okay,
report for that
cool.
right in Time to Pet, which is great.
Yeah,
So,
perfect. That's what it's funny. Actually, in our last interview with Ines, we talked about automation, and one of her biggest tips was using the software that you already have to like better. Because a lot of times we like have the software, right? Like you have Time to Pet, for example, in your business, and you're like, okay, I use it to book visits, but like that's it. It's like, no, there's so much potential with our softwares to be able to give us such valuable information, like what you
oh
just
yeah.
shared.
Yes.
That's wild. I love that.
There's of reporting in Time to Pet that if you like really just like spend a few hours just looking at the reporting functions and you'll find a lot of information that is really useful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you talked a little bit about revenue by service. You talked about client retention. Are there any other ones? I know there's also from a marketing perspective or employee or contractor perspective, what sort of metrics can you track with that?
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend doing employee retention as well and see how long your staff stays for. So make sure that your training costs are worth it. And like maybe if your employee retention is too low, look at how much am I compensating? Am I giving any benefits? Am I helping my company culture um, to make these employees want to stay longer? Or am I doing something like, am I missing something on the communication side as a manager, as a boss? Um, Employee retention, I think, is a really vital thing to know. And then as far as the marketing thing, I think like finding those target avatars, like we discussed, I think that that's a great thing to do. And just really just taking a step back because we all have these like preconceived notions about what our company is. Um, but if you actually take a step back and look at the data from a non-biased standpoint, you might be surprised.
A lot of times our businesses are our babies. And so we really have to look at it like as the data is just the numbers. Like, what are the numbers telling us? And I think removing ourselves from it a little bit can really inform and help us make better decisions.
Yes, I 100% think that that's the case. I know that I had some feelings about it when I first started diving in and realizing how high my cost of labor percentage was. And I was like,
Mhm.
it's not right. It was
Yes.
right.
Dang. Yeah, I feel like the hiring and like staff conversation is such a tough one too, because I know that a lot of people do struggle with keeping employees and finding good quality employees. And so being able to track the data and seeing where those holes are can really help. And sometimes you can find out that maybe we should be doing things a little bit different. And that can be hard as a business owner to be like, yeah, maybe this one's on me a little bit. It's not just like, it's not that everybody else sucks. Maybe we need to go back in and like refine our onboarding for employees and staff members.
Oh, 100%. That was one of the most valuable things that I did, um, which was, some advice that I had gotten from Michelle and was also reflected in my numbers was to send out a survey to my employees. And I just had it like anonymous. And I was like, how do you feel about working here? What's your biggest pain point with this company? And the info I got from that really shaped my journey as a manager and as a boss because I realized I was in my own little bubble and maybe the things that I liked, they didn't. So I think it's great to pull your employees.
Yeah, that's really smart advice. Making sure that everybody's happy and what can I do better and all of that is super. See, it's like data from another kind of perspective. It's like subjective data.
Right. Yeah.
I love
Just
it.
love data.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any like often overlooked numbers that you think are so crucial that people should not be avoiding?
Cost of labor. That's my number one. Um, I have a lot of people that ask me questions about data, of course, and I'm happy to answer them. And a lot of them are about cost of labor and like what should my cost of labor be, which I think is kind of dependent, right? If it's dependent on if you're out of the field 100%, it's dependent on, you know, your there's some states that you have to pay like the full mileage, so you have to like kind of understand that maybe your cost of labor might be a little bit higher than in other states, stuff like that. So, yes, the cost of labor, I think, is probably the most important thing because a lot of us, I don't know, it's like we almost feel this need to compensate our employees well, which I believe we should. But we also need to recognize that it is a business that has to be profitable in the end. So, raise your rates, maybe hire your employees on at a different rate. It just, yeah, you have to dive into that one.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for how you even start looking at that? Like, I mean, obviously you just like brought up mileage, but what factors do you have to look at in terms of like calculating your cost for labor?
Yeah, so you have to look at, your hourly or your your per piece compensation, of course. Then you have to look at mileage if you do reimburse mileage. You're gonna have to look at your unemployment. You're gonna have to look at your um, taxes, not only on the base wages, but also on any tips that they get. So I actually made this big spreadsheet called payroll costs, and that helped me basically put in every single payroll. And I know the cost of labor of every single one of my employees for each payroll and overall. And that kind of helped me figure out my averages, which has helped me to make good financial decisions for my company.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you originally had a website for these spreadsheets, but now they're only accessible if you're in one of the cohorts for Michelle Klein. Is that how somebody could get access to those?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
We have an exclusive partnership now. And honestly, her mastermind is fantastic, and it changed me as a business owner, and like as a person in some ways, which sounds very hyperbolic, but it's true. But yeah, that's how you can find them.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I highly recommend Michelle and those spreadsheets because yeah, I mean, and speaking of data, I mean, that's something that she even posts too, like the average ROI from working with her, which is like super fascinating to see. You know, she tracks the data. So just a little pitch for Michelle there. So as far as how often people should be checking their numbers, do you have any advice around that?
Yes, I would say it depends on how confident you are and how much of a how ready you are to know your numbers, because I think it can kind of be a gut punch at the start. So if you're not ready, maybe look at it once every couple months and just start from there. If you are like, I'm going to figure out what's going on, do it once a week. But I think it just like depends on where you're at. Let it digest, because sometimes it can be kind of jarring, and sometimes it can be great and give you the confidence. And you're like, okay, yeah, I know my numbers now, and I'm going to do this thing, and then do it weekly.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I feel like too, that whole 80/20 rule, that 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of what you're actually doing. And so I feel like sometimes though, while it can be really intimidating to look at your data, it could allow you to let go of so much. It could actually simplify your business in so many ways.
1000%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you give some examples of decisions that you or even some of your clients or people who had access to the spreadsheets or something like that? Do you have any like decisions that you've been able to make thanks to tracking data that you probably wouldn't have made otherwise?
Yeah, so I've had some other people say that they have cut certain services because of their um, data and how it looked. I've had other people say that they've really ramped up their marketing towards certain areas or certain types of clients. I've had other folks say that, they they started delegating different tasks, because I have this like spreadsheet on time tracking, and it really goes into it in like a kind of numbers way, which is just very nerdy of me, but it goes into like how many hours do you spend on like revenue generating things versus non-revenue generating things? How much time do you spend on things that you're confident in versus you just couldn't care less about? Um, and so it's like giving them, some opportunity to delegate and see what they're not happy with, or that they might not be as efficient at as somebody else, and delegate that to somebody else on their team.
Yeah, I love it. See, I feel like the theme through these examples and everything we've talked through throughout this is like, because I feel like so many times when we have podcast episodes or blog posts or social media posts, it's like another thing that we're supposed to be doing, right? Like, yeah, you're supposed to be tracking your data too. Like, let's add that to the list. But with tracking data, you can change your business and simplify it and save so much time, like narrow down what's actually working. And then it can give you so much more success while you don't have to do all the other stuff that wasn't bringing you in revenue. It's incredible.
Yes. Yeah, it gives you a lot of insight, good and sometimes bad. But I will say that it's made me a much more confident person, because I realize that it's okay if I'm not great at everything. It's okay if I'm not perfect. Um, but I have like the resources to kind of back up. Like I know what I'm doing and I know what my goals are, and it just like helps me push forward.
Yeah, and you know what's working, so you know what to do more of, and you know
Yeah.
what didn't work, so you can let go of it. It's so fascinating. I think too, like a lot of times people do think that like, data has to be super complicated, but a lot of times your reporting systems like time to pet or something like that can actually just do the data for you. It's just a matter of actually looking at it or knowing what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can even just do it by hand. You can just like write down the numbers and just have it on a whiteboard and just write down, okay, this was how much our revenue was of dog walking in March of 2025. This was April 2025. And just look at your numbers and see how they work.
Right. Absolutely. And hopefully be able to let go of some things.
Yes.
So I'd love to shift gears a little bit because you are also a brand and website design client of ours. So I couldn't resist talking about that a little bit. I'd love to know like what made you decide it was time for a brand and website design refresh.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved my experience. It was really, really great. I got referred to y'all by one of my friends, Maris, who had a fantastic experience with y'all. So really, I knew that I was going to change my company, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to change the whole vibe of this. So I really wanted to go with like a fun and bold and like we went to a more on-demand service for dog walking. So I really wanted to go with like the we'll be there and also we're really professional and we're also pretty cool. Like we're pretty fun. So
You definitely have a cool brand.
yeah, I love
Biased, but yeah, I love it. That's awesome. And I'm curious, like, how did the brand and website help support your data or goals? Like, especially someone like who's really tuned in with what's working in your business. How has that helped your data-driven decisions?
Yeah, so like you discussed earlier, there's like two very clear paths on our website. And that has helped immensely with what we've done with our company over the last couple of years. So now it's like you got a cat, we got cat sitting. We got a dog, we do daily dog walks. And it's just really been amazing because it just feels so succinct, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, and it makes a really clear path for our prospective clients to just sign on board. There's no questions. There's no more. I don't get the do you guys do boarding questions that I used to get a lot with our old
Good.
website. So
That's really good.
yeah.
I love it. And that's something too that like not necessarily like data per se, but looking at what works and what doesn't on websites and how it can help save you time and refine down the process. It's almost like a big funnel. Here's all the options you have for being a business owner and let's like bring that funnel in a little bit and get things working for you so that it can actually save you time and make better decisions and all of the things. And I love that about your website too because it is so I don't know what it is about the pet industry, or maybe this is broadened outside of the pet industry, but I feel like a lot of times we want to put all sorts of information on our website, like everything on there, and it can really easily confuse potential clients. And so when we got to work on your website, it's like, this is so straightforward. It's clean. And people like straightforward and clean. They want it to be so easy. We don't want them to burn calories trying to interpret what's on your website and what's right for them. They want to be like, yes, I want to
Yeah.
work with them. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly how to sign up. It should be very straightforward.
Yeah. I love it. We've had a great experience with it. It's just like 1, 2, 3, bam, you're a client.
Yeah, I
So
love it.
we're meeting and it's great. It's been a real game changer for us, especially as we, focus more on, the regular, the on demand, everything is quick, fast.
I love that. And that it encapsulates everything too. You have all of the touch points on there. You have very modern type of touch point, which you want a modern brand if you're doing the on-demand type vibe as well. Like it all kind of works together very succinctly, which is awesome. And if anyone wants to see her website, it's Paws and Claws, WI for Wisconsin.com. And I'll link it in the show notes too, because it's seriously one of my favorite websites ever. Like it's so
I,
cute.
I love it. I
I
love the
love it too.
colors too.
And I love all the like Madison incorporations and the like landmarks. It's a good website.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things is there's like the Capitol building is like our big thing in Madison. And so you guys took the Capitol building and just made it like part of this graphic that's really cool. And that's one of my favorite things of the website. So
Yeah. Shout out to Cagney. She did a fabulous job on that. I
she,
love just looking at it.
yeah, she really did. She went above and beyond.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your experience on that. I love to see how that overlays within like data and making decisions and how it's streamlined, how all that kind of works together under one umbrella. So it's cool that you have this data expertise, but also we're clients who can see how it all works together.
Yeah. I wish I could figure out like the data of like our previous website
I know.
and
I
now.
know. I know. We've talked about that, and it's I feel like it would just be so complicated for a lot of our clients to have to go in and pull data from
Yeah.
old websites before, like I'm like I don't even know if it's worth it even though I know that like the data is there. Um I feel like it would just complicate things, but I'd love to get those because I hear things like more unofficially. Like, I know we get more traffic, we get more leads from
Yeah.
Google, like that sort of stuff. But like seeing it from if we had like a 12-month view of the previous website to 12 months of the new website, like how that trajectory like grows is would be awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely helped our SEO and our ranking and everything. So
That's
it's been
awesome.
great.
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so if someone's feeling super overwhelmed with data and where should I go from here? What is one small step they can take this week to start getting a handle on their numbers?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say just write something down. Whatever your pain point is. Is your pain point your staff? Is your pain point your you don't want to do dog sitting or you're not sure if you want to do cat sitting anymore, what have you. Whatever it is, write something down, little goal, and then say, okay, that's my pain point, and I'm going to figure out some data when I'm ready to help me solve this.
I love that. And see if your software can tackle it for you too,
Yeah.
because that would be nice. Is there anything else that you want to share about data or any advice that you have for any of our listeners revolving around anything we talked about today?
Yeah, you don't have to be a numbers person to look at your data. I hear that a lot. Like, oh, I'm not a numbers person, which not everybody is, and I respect that. But there's a lot of different things that you can do. A lot of, like you said, the reporting in the software that does it for you. And it's okay to be a little scared, but you don't have to be a numbers person.
Yeah,
You'll be
that's
great.
really good advice. Yeah, that's good advice. And perhaps your business will be simplified and made easier, and you'll have more time in your day if you just take a quick peek at some of those numbers.
Oh,
So before we wrap up, we end every guest interview with this question. What is one mindful practice or tip that you yourself do in your daily life to help reduce stress and burnout as a business owner?
I do 3 things a day. I write down 3 things that I need to accomplish that day. If I do more, that's great. But my goal is to get those 3 things done. Anything after that is just, the cherry on top.
Awesome. Where can everybody find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so you could find my dog walking company, Paws and Claws WI.com. Check out the really cool website that PMU made. Um, and then as far as the spreadsheets, they're available in Michelle Klein's Dog Co. Mastermind, so you can find those there. I think that her mastermind is really worth the investment, and you get the spreadsheets too, so that's pretty cool.
That's true. It's like a double win. We'll link all of that below. I believe Michelle's at dogcolaunch.com as well. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I love talking data, and I love that this is a conversation that's being brought up in the pet industry because it's so important and can save people so much stress and time. So thank you for being willing to hop on and talk about it. I think this will really be so helpful for so many of our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here.